Hello everybody, welcome to today's video where I'll be showing you how to create, not the text, that's another video perhaps, but I'll be showing you how to take some text and modify it so that it's curved around any other object, such as this sphere. And these are the objects that I'll be using to make that happen. And I'll explain why I've got a mesh circle, a Bezier circle, and an empty plane axis. And also why I've got two text objects. How curious. Right. Here's our lovely globe, and this is what we want our text to basically animate around and deform around. That's just going to sit there, and we're not going to do anything with that. It's just going to be there as a placeholder, really. I'll explain why we've got these objects here. And first of all, we need some text. So I'm going to use this block of text here. And you can see in the outliner, I'll just quickly run through the objects again. So I've got the BB text, which is the one I made. We've got a Bezier circle, which is the one that we're going to be using to deform the text. We've got a circle, that's actually a mesh circle. So let's quickly rename that. We've got a rounded cube, which is that globe thing there. And we have some of Blender's standard default text object here as well. Cool, right. Step one. Let's take the text and place it at the world origin, because that is the center of our globe that we want to have our text animated around and, going around that circle basically. So we're going to put that in the same position as the globe, right? It just makes sense. So you can do that two ways. Here on the side panel, press N if you don't see it. Under transform, which is under the item tab just there at the top, you can see this is at minus 2.4 something. You can just click in that and enter 0, enter. Enter 0, enter. Just put in enter. Just put in 0 and enter. That's what I meant to say. My goodness me. Right. So there's our text at the world origin. Brilliant. Now we want a Bezier circle. So to add that, you would do Shift A, go down to curve and add a circle. That's what that is. And that also needs to be in that location just there. So again, I'm going to click here and type in 0 and enter. And another way to do that is just with the object selected, just press Alt G, and that will clear the transforms for the location. And the reason, I'll explain why this is really important, because if these two objects, your text and your Bezier circle, if their pivot points are not in the exact same place, then when you deform this using this curve, it will just look really bad. It won't work properly. And we'll have a look at that as we progress through this. So I'll just quickly save that. Right, so let's select our text, head over to our modifiers just over here. Now you can ignore this one, it's a subdivision modifier, so that's fine. But what you want to be adding here is under Deform, select Curve. And with that done, we now have to tell the modifier which curve object do we want to use as our deformer, as the curve object essentially. So let's click on this little eyedropper and we can just click it directly in the viewport. And when that happens, our curve is now distorted, obviously, around the curve. And it's looking really nice. From the top view, that looks great. And that's great if you want to render it from this view, but we want to render it from the front view. So all we need to do is, if I just disable the curve modifier for 1 second, there's our text. First of all, let's rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis. So I'm just going to type in 90 here in the rotation value there. If not, press RX90, enter. So with that done, let's enable our curve modifier again. You can see our text is now correctly orientated on the curve. Now I should say that if this doesn't look like this when you do it, and I'll probably show you what it may look like if I go into the Bezier circle and then tab into edit mode and select all of the points on that circle by pressing the A key to select everything. If I go to segments at the top here and click on switch direction and then go back to object mode, this may be the default of what you see. It might be that the text is upside down and back to front essentially. It's obviously not what you want. So to fix that, you may try, just like I did, to change the deformation axis on the curve modifier. Now if you do that, you probably find that it doesn't correct the text at all. So just go through all of these. That one's okay, that looks fine. Again, that's from the top view. You can see all the other ones don't quite work the way we expect them to. Or they are working, but not with this particular text. And that's because the direction of the curve is going the wrong way, or the wrong way for this particular text. Because it might be that other text may work absolutely fine, but in this case it doesn't. So just bear that in mind. And to fix it, go into edit mode on the Bezier circle, the curve, go to segments and switch direction. And that tends to fix the issue. So there's our text on the curve, and that's looking really cool. Now I should say that at this point you might be tempted to maybe say, okay, I want the text to be somewhere else, or I want to rotate it. So if I press R for rotation and then Z or Z for the Z axis, and then rotate it, you can see this happens. And that's because we're actually rotating the object, the text object, not the text along the curve, because Blender doesn't know that there's no relationship between the text and the curve at the object level, other than the object, i.e. the text, has got a modifier, and that's it. So if I turn off the modifier again there, the curve modifier, you can see if I rotate that again on the Z, you're essentially doing that to the text, which is not going to bend around the curve. Right, with that said and done, so how do we actually manipulate this and animate it? Because we can't rotate the text. But what if we rotate the Bezier circle then? So with that selected, I'm going to press R again, Z, and then rotate that. And this happens. Looks like our text is waving through the air, which is quite cool. That's what you want. So that doesn't work either. That's not the result that we want to have. So a quick way to fix that, or not fix it, just to get around it really, is just use another object and parent these two to another object and then rotate that object. So let me demonstrate that. So here's a mesh circle with 16 sides, 16 vertices. If I tab into edit mode, you can see it's a box standard mesh circle. So you can add that with Shift A, mesh circle, give it 16 sides, or as many sides as you wish, and use that as your parent object. But anyway, I'm going to use this one, and this really can be anything. It can be an actual object itself, it could be a plane axis, whatever you want, an empty. Anyway, with that selected, again we need to put this at the same origin point as the other objects. So with that selected, I'm going to press Alt G to reset the location transforms, just there. Right, so that's there now, and because this one is slightly, well, it's the same size as the Bezier circle, I'm actually going to scale it up just a little bit so you can clearly see them next to each other. It doesn't have to be the same size, and it doesn't matter if you scale it either, as long as you don't rotate it. So we have that there now. Let's select our text, and now let's select, by holding Shift, select the Bezier circle, and holding Shift still, press and select the mesh circle. And that will be the last object you select, because it goes, or it's shown in a yellow color and not this kind of mid-range orange thing, red-orange. You want to make sure that the mesh circle basically is in yellow. And with that selected, press Ctrl P, Command P on a Mac, and you want to parent that. And I'm going to select, actually, I might as well select Object Keep Transform. Why not? Nothing happens in the viewport, of course, because all we've done is parent this and this to this. So with that mesh circle just selected, I press G to grab it. You can see I'm moving the text and the Bezier circle. But you'll notice as well that the text and the curve are not moving in relation to each other. So that's what we want. So let's undo that and put it back to around where the globe is. So the reason you want to do that is because now you can select the mesh circle. And I'm going to be on, if you want to animate this essentially, let's say you want to animate this from the front view. So I want this to be rotated and facing down the Y axis. So first of all, I'm going to rotate this on the Z, hold down Control and rotate that by 90 degrees. like that. You can see there in the transforms there, it says 90 degrees. You can just type that in there if you like. So now we've got it facing in the front view. With my mouse pointer in this 3D viewport here, I'm going to press the K key. And that brings up the Insert Keyframe menu. And we want to select Rotation. And you'll notice here, we've added a keyframe for X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to undo that. And you may want to add a keyframe for every single axis, but I don't want to do that. I still want to have control over the X and the Y, perhaps, but I only want the keyframe on the Z. So what I want to do instead is, with that selected, put my mouse pointer over the Z here, right click, and select Insert Single Keyframe. And that does exactly what it says on the tin. It inserts a single keyframe. Magic. So now we've done that. That's on frame 1 of our timeline, you can see just there. And I want this to rotate all the way around 360 degrees and come back to the beginning at frame 240. So let's head over to frame 240 there. And we can see we've got a 90-degree rotation already, as you saw on the first frame. So you want to add 90 and 360 together, and that will give you 450. So now we've got that there, we need to add a keyframe. So let's right click here again, Insert Single Keyframe. So if I go back to frame 1 now and press the spacebar to play the animation, our text seems to start off quite slowly and then accelerates about around this point here, around the back, halfway, and then comes to a slow stop again as it comes around to the front. And that will repeat forever, of course. Now the reason it's going so slow is because all of the keyframes that you add by default in Blender have a Bezier interpolation between them. So what does that look like, or what does it mean? So if I head over and switch this view here from the timeline to the graph editor, you can see here's our Z-axis that we added the keyframes to, and this is what that curve looks like between those two keyframes. So you can see there it kind of slowly comes in to the curve, speeds up here, and this is the value of rotation on the left. So you can see there we're starting at 90, just below the 100 there, and this keyframe is at 450, which is the value we set at frame 240. So that's doing the right thing. And that's why it starts off slow, speeds up, and then starts to slow down just there. Now you could select these handles. You can click and drag, or just click on them directly. And you can actually just press G to grab them and manipulate them like this. And that would change the animation as you're making it. So if we press play now, again it starts off a lot slower now, speeds up here, and gets quite quick towards the end. That's too painful to watch, so I'm going to undo that, put it back to its original. So what we want to do, we can change this to a linear curve, basically a straight line. You can do that in the graph editor, and you can also do it in the timeline. I believe in the graph editor, if you select both points, you can right click and select interpolation mode from the menu and select linear. And that now makes this line straight. If I press play now, it's a continuous speed all the way around the globe, and it will just go on forever. If we switch to our timeline, if you have the interpolation at Bezier, for example, you want to change it to something else, you can select all of the keyframes, or a set of keyframes, but I want to select all of them, and press the T key. So T for Tommy, press the T key and select linear. And that will do exactly the same thing as we did in the graph editor. So let's go back to frame 1. And just very quickly actually, you notice that if I'm on frame 1 here, if I press shift right arrow on the keyboard, that would take me to the last frame. You can see that nothing changed in the viewport because this keyframe is essentially the same as that one. So back to frame 1, shift left arrow key, frame 1, frame 240. So what you want to do with infinite rotations and repeating animations is you want to put this last keyframe on 241. So we're going to drag and select these 4 keyframes here, or points essentially. Press G to grab them and move them over 1 frame. So now our frame animation, or our timeline, ends at 240, as you can see there. And if I press play, go to frame 1, you can see now if I go to frame 240, it's slightly different. And if I play that, and I actually hide this, you won't see any, well, you know where it's going to end anyway, but you won't see any like pauses in the animation. It'll continue to go through really smoothly. There you go. That's really cool. So that's how you would do cycling, repeating 360 animations, essentially. Other ways to do it, but that's not what this video is about, so I'll shut up. Right. Next, what if you wanted to do another rotation, but not on the text per se, because that's rotating around this axis already using the mesh circle, as we've just done. What if we want to rotate this? Perhaps we go to frame 1. Maybe we want to rotate this at a slight angle, like that. Because remember, we didn't set keyframes on the X and the Y. Now we can do that, and you're going to think that the text would animate around this, like this axis here. But if I press play, watch what happens. As you can see, it kind of just slides across. It's not really rotating properly. But the text is getting lower. Well, not technically, but it's not rotating correctly anyway, you can tell. So let's put that back to 0. So this is lying nice and straight. And we're going to do a bit of Inception, the movie, where we're going to use another object. And this time I'm going to use a plane axis, an empty plane axis. And I'm going to use that as another rotation control for the whole, well, the whole thing here really. So the text, this curve, and this one, mainly this one. So all we need to do is add another object or a plane axis, put that at the same location, so Alt G, or type in 0 in the transforms just there. I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it, like that. And we can select the mesh circle only. We don't have to select the text or the Bezier circle, because remember, these are already parented to this object. So let's just select the mesh circle and select Shift and then click the plane axis. Now that's the active yellow object. And then again, we want to parent those. So press Ctrl P. And again, I'm going to select Keep Transform. Shouldn't make a difference, but I'm going to select that one. And now, if we just play that, and I select the plane axis, go to the front view, and I press R to rotate, like that. Our text is now very nicely rotating around the globe. And that's awesome. Let me make this a little bit quicker, the animation, because it's only 24 frames per second. So let me select the keyframed mesh circle. Let's bring these. First of all, we've got 24 frames per second. So I'm going to do 24 times, so I'm using the star in this case, times 4. That gives us 96. So let's select these last keyframes here, press G to grab them, and rather than putting them on 96, let's put them on 97. So we have that continuous repeat rotation. If I press play now, it should be a lot faster. There you go. Looking pretty cool. Isn't that lovely? Yeah, everyone knows Superman, right? You know that Clark Kent worked with the for the Daily Planet, the newspaper. On top of their building, they have the Daily Planet globe, and they've got this text that goes around it. From memory, I could be wrong, but that could be something that you create and animate like this. It's really cool. So that works really well. And because we can use this plane axis, we can rotate this any orientation you like, and the text will always go in this perfect circle, which is really cool. I'm going to put this back to 0 and give it a slight, in fact, I'm not going to give it a slight rotation. because next I'm going to show you what happens if you use Blender's default text. Okay, so let me show you what would happen if you didn't have the right kind of text topology and you try to do exactly the same thing as we've just done. So with that said, let me make a bit more space here. And here's our text object, which I simply added through, well, just by doing Shift A and then selecting text. And there it is. Tab into edit mode and type in whatever you like. There's our text. And what I then did is obviously change the scale, change the font to something else if you like, make it well uppercase, up to you what the text is. And I also added some depth to it by selecting the extrude just there. And finally, a little bit of bevel. So just to round off the hard edges, the sharp edges there. That looks a lot nicer. Oh, and also I, under paragraph, I selected center and middle, just so that we've got the text nicely centered there. So that's what that is, basically. Let's go to frame 1. And with this text selected, let's hide this text now because we don't need to see that right now. And let's try to do the same thing with this lovely Blender text. So that needs to be at the same location as the Bezier Circle. So let's press Alt-G, put it there. And up before, we need to rotate this 90 degrees so it's facing us in the front. So I'm going to press RX 90. You can see it's standing correctly now. I'm going to put it back to 0. It's going to undo that. And now we can add the Deform curve modifier. And then like before, we're going to use the eyedropper and select the Bezier Circle. The reason we don't want to use this default text, you can see the problem already. Now if I turn on the wireframe there, you can see, take a look at the end, for example. We've literally got 1, 2, 3. Okay, you've got these here as well, which is really bad. Really thin triangles here. And here, text was originally, it's a curve object. And we've converted that to a mesh. And you don't get good topology. So you need to retopologize this text to make it nice and clean. And for comparison, let me show you the text that I've used, that I made to use on this in this video. If I hide that one and bring back the original, you can see this is the text that I've got. It's all made up of good topology, good edge flow, nice blocky faces, nice and clean. This will deform in any way, shape and form that you like. Thanks for watching, and if you like my content, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel to reach a broader audience. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.